Again, thanks to those in the audience for the flexibility of the schedule. We will call the meeting back to order. At this time, we're going to go back into the agenda to item F.10, and I would invite Caroline to come forward.
Thank you. I just have a brief introduction for the agenda item that we'll hear today that was scheduled for 1 o'clock. Since approximately May of 2021, staff has been communicating with an electronic prescription software company. This company is Weno Exchange, LLC, and its CEO is Tina Goodman. Staff brought the request at your last board meeting, and you agreed to hear the discussion referenced by F.9 on the agenda regarding e-prescribing software by pharmacies to discuss the accepted method of issuance for a controlled substance prescription for dispensing. Ms. Goodman is present today to introduce herself to the board and provide background on her business's position. I will briefly provide some background on the discussion that we've been having with staff. Weno Exchange is the intermediary electronic prescription software that is compliant with all DEA requirements for e-prescribing. What I mean by an intermediary electronic prescription software is a computer software that connects the prescriber and the pharmacy to the electronic prescription. The discussion is focused around what requirement there may be for a Texas pharmacy to retrieve when the pharmacy's data processing system is not integrated with the intermediary electronic prescription software, such as the Weno Exchange system. It is staff's position that to acknowledge it's staff's understanding that to acknowledge and address the lack of integration with all pharmacy data processing software systems, the Weno Exchange provides a secure and, again, DEA compliant portal for retrieval of the electronic prescription. However, some pharmacies refuse to accommodate the retrieval of the prescription through the Weno Exchange provided portal if the pharmacy's data processing software does not integrate the data from the Weno Exchange prescription software. Rather, the pharmacy utilizes.
In 2001, we got in the e-prescribing business, and it's been a tough battle. You know, we got a big giant, to compete with, so a lot of harsh competition out there. But anyway, our core service is an intermediary service, meaning in the picture you can see any prescriber system that wants to join Weno will deliver the standard NCPDP message in real time, computer to computer, to the pharmacy system. And so that's core. That's how SureScripts does it. We're the only competitor to SureScripts. There is no other one that we know of. So that's how we do the intermediary service. In addition to just normal EHRs and pharmacy technology vendor systems using an intermediary, we had to solve, in order to compete with SureScripts, we had to solve the chicken and egg problem. If a doctor called us and said, how many pharmacies do you have on? If we didn't have enough, they wouldn't use us. And if a pharmacy called and said, well, how many doctors do you have on? If we didn't have enough, they wouldn't use us. So the way we overcame the chicken and egg problem was to provide a standalone software solution in case the pharmacy system wasn't yet connected to Weno. And it meets all the DEA rules. And so we have it's like a bridge software. So if you turn the page, our other service is we offer standalone e-prescribing system. This is unique. SureScripts doesn't do this. So basically we have one for prescribers, real cheap. It's like $8 a month. The doctor can e-prescribe with EPCS and real easy to use. And they really like it. You know, a lot of dentists, rural doctors, it's really meeting that need for people that need to e-prescribe because of a mandate. And they don't want to break the bank doing it. And then on the other side, we have a standalone for the pharmacies. And if you'll notice, that's our bridge software. So it's never been designed to do all the things a pharmacy management system would do. It's bare bones e-prescribing. according to all the federal, and state rules. It'll allow a prescriber, when they say, how many pharmacies do you have on? We can say all of them. Because if you'll turn the next page, you'll see that when a doctor has a patient that wants to send a prescription to a pharmacy, we basically have a rule. Look it up. Is the pharmacy system connected to Weno? Send it to their pharmacy system. If the pharmacy system is not connected, send it to that Weno Online standalone. And if you'll notice, next to that image on the third page, there's a fax. And we have to notify these pharmacies that they have an electronic prescription, so we do that by fax. And so they're aware, because of the fax, that they have been sent a legal electronic prescription on behalf of the patient. So this arrives at the pharmacy, and besides the fax, if they're using the standalone, there is one disadvantage to it. There's a big advantage. It's free. It's on the web. All you need is to be online, and every pharmacy is online. That's a great advantage, and they can keep the business without, if they have a software that's dragging their feet about getting connected, they can keep the business by using the free, online portal. And those are great advantages. The disadvantages to a pharmacy is they did receive it. They should annotate like they are normally required to do if it's a controlled substance management system, to label it, inventory management and all that other good stuff. So that it adds a little bit of a burden to them. Otherwise, if it was going into their normal system. And so what most pharmacies do throughout the nation is they get enough of these. They got a hot doctor, a couple of doctors in their area. They're going to be pulling on the coattails of their pharmacy system and go, connect to Weno, connect to Weno. And that's usually how the process works. So anyway, that is our bridge system. The problem in Texas, as Carolyn pointed to, is this fax. This is not a real fax. This is just kind of the top of the fax on the next page. This is what the pharmacy sees. It says an electronic prescription was created and transmitted to you on this date by Weno. And until your system is capable retrieve transmissions on Weno online, go to here, put your code in, and view the DEA audit. Every pharmacy system, they're required to look at that audit to see if it meets DEA rules. There's no difference with ours. We give them that to show them. And then this is the thing that Texas has. They have a rule that says if you otherwise receive a valid prescription, you can fill it. You don't have to verify that the doctor was under any kind of mandate to e-prescribe that drug if you otherwise receive a valid prescription. So what we do to help our doctors, is we provide a prescription on the bottom of that fax, be a legal version. And so when it's a legal version, dispense, no problem. When it's not considered a legal version, state rules apply, the particular drug applies, and on you go. We're in every state. Then the instructions say, get the electronic one. And so that's kind of how it works. That works beautifully in most cases. Where it doesn't work is the large chain pharmacies. CVS, Walgreens, Rite Aid, Walmart. And they are, without getting into the weeds, the National Drugstore Association of America owns SureScripts. CVS owns 25% of SureScripts. And they just refuse to ever join the portal or connect. It's almost like a group boycott. Now, I don't mind if they don't, but what bothers me is that runs off doctors. If a doctor is e-prescribing because he wants to do it on Weno, and a CVS is the patient's choice of pharmacy, and it's a Schedule II, they call the doctor and say, we can't take Weno's prescription, even though it's legal, even though it's valid. And they say, you have to either handwrite it or pretty much find another pharmacy. And so if you're a surgeon or any kind of, dentist or somebody like that, relies on getting people out of pain for, certain reasons, it's real hard to have to do it. So what Texas doctors do, if they want to stick with us on a Schedule II, they write them. Now that completely circumvents the Texas law, because the doctors are required by law to e-prescribe unless there is a waiver or an exception. And so by them doing that, it's forcing doctors that use our system to break the law themselves. So they're now both breaking the law. And so basically, I have another list for you here. It's like a long list. Now, your law went into effect in January 2021, and we started noticing problems pretty much right away. And this list represents every pharmacy that is violating currently what I believe the Texas Controlled Substance Act, Chapter 481. And I'm going to explain how I know that, how I can prove that, and hopefully you will agree. You will notice that I've given each pharmacy at least one prescription. While we send thousands and thousands of prescriptions out a day, I didn't want to bore you with the details. At least one of them was not done right in Texas by that pharmacy. And so that's what that list represents, and it grows every day. So, and then the problems. So here's what happens. Schedule IIs go across. If it goes to an independent pharmacy or they follow the directions, no problem, usually. If it goes to one of those big chains, they, again, won't fill it, won't get the version. How do I know that? Because our system is DEA audited, and it requires a access event log. And we can tell when somebody has accessed the system. We can tell if a CVS joined. We can tell if a doctor wrote a prescription if he's using the standalone. So our audit log has no record of that prescription ever getting touched. And it's a controlled substance electronic prescription. Secondly, if it's a schedule, I've got a typo there, I'm sorry, Schedule 3 through 5, they're usually dispensing from that fax version at the bottom. And that's not really allowed by federal law and your own state law, which I will point out. And then on occasion, so these are the three problems. Then on occasion, a pharmacy IT department will use trickery. What I mean by that is they will block the pharmacist from receiving seeing the e-faxes on their screen. So they won't follow the directions. And sometimes we can get on top of that pretty quick and it'll resolve, but it sure wreaks havoc. It wreaked havoc. It ran off 65 clinics in Texas. Called me yesterday and said, Tina, we want to use you, really do. When you get this problem fixed, we will come back. But they couldn't afford to, they're an EHR system and they couldn't afford to get their doctors angry and their patients are calling and it just wreaks havoc in their clinics, right, when we have a pandemic. So these are the problems. Now, the next page is the rules that I have pointed out. The Chapter 481 rules. Ideally, of course, the definition of the pharmacy says that they are in accordance with state and federal law. The next rule says they must be a DEA registrant. The next rule says records. If a person is registered as DEA registrant to dispense a controlled substance, they shall keep and maintain inventories and records in compliance with federal law and the rules the board or director, again another typo, may adopt. And then the last one, a pharmacist may not fill a prescription that is prepared or issued as prescribed, not prepared or issued as prescribed by this chapter. Now, that's the state laws, a few of them. And then you have the next page, the federal ones. Now the Federal Register is specifically for e-prescribing controlled substances, Part 1311-200, Part F and G. The F one says when a pharmacist fills a controlled substance in a manner that would require under Part 1306, they must make a notation of the prescription as if the prescription were a paper prescription. The pharmacist must make that same notation electronically when filling an electronic prescription and retain the annotation record or link it. And then the last part of it, when a prescription is received electronically, the prescription and all required annotations must be retained electronically. That is not done because we have that audit log. So in every case, if that controlled substance was filled, I had one, I had a dentist, I had an abscess and a broken tooth. HEB's my pharmacy. My dentist is on Weno. He sent the prescription. Guess what? They dispensed it. I have a perfect example of this rule not being followed by HEB. And so, and HEB is another one that won't give us time of day. So then, so if they're dispensing controls, they're supposed to do it according, do the record keeping like they're supposed to. Also, the next part says, when a pharmacist receives a paper or oral prescription that indicates it was originally transmitted electronically to the pharmacy, well, the pharmacy's got to check the records to ensure the electronic version was not received and the prescription dispensed. If both prescriptions were received, in other words, our fax version and the electronic version, the pharmacy must mark one void. This is not done. Again, our audit records prove they have never marked this void. So they are not following the record-keeping laws according to the state. And so finally, my ask is, I know the board is capable of exercising their authority to administer rules relevant to this chapter. And I think the clarification is in one spot. I think that rule that says the pharmacy's ability to dispense from an otherwise valid, prescription is misinterpreted. I think it means if you get it first, if you get this prescription, fill it. It doesn't mean you can ring the doctor up who's given you a valid electronic one and say, demand another one. And I think that's where the big issue is. And so I believe this rule is for receiving the original. Otherwise, that's where I think the clarification needs to happen. Even if it's not clarified, they're still breaking the record-keeping laws. Then on this list, I would like these pharmacies accountable. I don't want to get them in trouble. I do not want to get anybody in trouble. I want patients to get their medicines timely. I want doctors to be able to follow the law. I want them to be able to be compliant. That's why we built a multi-million-dollar system for them to use absolutely free. So I'd be happy with a warning. I work with other states, California, Florida, boards of pharmacies. There are some that are very aggressive. And we had our first CVS in California join that have made mandates suitable for the doctors, but forgot about the pharmacies. And it's not really y'all's fault. Back then, everybody was using SureScripts. There was no problem. Since then, SureScripts is sued by the Federal Trade Commission, opening up the competition in that area. Now there's 2 intermediaries. So you didn't really have to think about it when you were putting those rules together, but now it's problematic. And so we have pharmacies. You may think we struggle all over the place. We have pharmacies following the rules all over America.
Can you're way over your 10 minutes.
I'm so sorry. Okay, I'll stop.
Okay.
Pardon me, Julie.
You're good.
And if y'all have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Do you have any questions
Will
for
we get this presentation
electronically?
electronically?
Can you send us the presentation electronically?
Oh, certainly. I have a flash drive. I'll give Carol. Okay.
So yes.
And anything else you want besides the PowerPoint? Okay. Okay. Anything else?
Any other questions for Ms. Goodman? Well, thank you for your presentation.
I really appreciate the time.
we'll open up for discussion. There's no action that needs to be taken unless we feel like there needs to be one.
Julie?
I mean, it's first I hear this, I just want some time to review some of this stuff,
Yeah.
so. It's a lot of stuff she gave us here.
I'll say this is not the first I've heard of this,
Yeah,
and our legal department has looked at it all ways to Sunday, and nobody's breaking laws as far as anybody knows. I mean, Megan can comment, but
Yes, as Caroline said in the beginning, staff's position is that our regulations do not require a pharmacy to have a specific data processing system or disallow a pharmacy from filling a prescription from an otherwise valid means. Just for clarification, she was saying that there was a rule that said otherwise valid. That's not exactly accurate. It's a statute within the Texas Controlled Substances Act, so this board could not modify statute.
John, we're at 1:28. Do you think that we can we go 2 minutes early? No. Okay, fine. Fine. No. All right, if you look on the miscellaneous business, we'll kind of run through that, and then it'll be past the 1:30 and we'll be good. So the first is, do we have any items that we feel need to be put on the agenda for the May 3rd meeting? All right, seeing none, if you do come up with one, please let staff know. Everybody will notice that the FY 2022 schedule for informal conferences, huge thanks to Lily for putting this out, and really, we have a great staff, when you look at everything that everybody does. March, we already worked with Ian that he's going to observe an informal conference, but I wanted to get these in front of everybody so that we can get them on our schedules. If for some reason something comes up, you can reach out to staff, but really, we can reach out to one another. I had something come up recently, and Donnie and I just switched. We do need to make sure that, staff knows when that switch is occurring so that they can make sure that the correct information gets to the correct person. But we want to make it as easy as possible for everybody on these informal conferences. And like we talked about earlier, they're super important. They're important to the people coming before us, and they're important to the public in the fact that, we are taking appropriate action when necessary. So the next informal conference is February 15th. And then March 1st through the 3rd. And then April 5th through the 7th. So please do, look to see where you are on that. And then our next board meeting is May the 3rd. And I believe that Tim has some additional information to share as far as other upcoming events.
Just FYI, February 15th was canceled.
I know,
So
I
if you're
thought it
trying to
was.
find
That's
it
why I was-
on the schedule, we canceled it.
That's why I paused for a minute, because I thought, Okay, so scratch the February 15th.
Lori, have a question.
It was just about that.
Yeah, that's why I stopped for a minute. I thought, okay.
We apologize for that. No February 15th. You're off duty that day. Some opportunities at NABP. I'm behind on some of this, and I'm learning of what I have to look at from NABP and what I have to read and what I have to digest. There is an opioid regulatory collaborative conference that's being sponsored in Washington, D.C. on March the 7th and the 8th. That conference is full at the present time, but they've told me if we have someone that wants to go, I can submit a name. So if you're interested, reach out to me after today's meeting and let me know. Washington, D.C., March 7th and 8th, Opioid Regulatory Collaborative Summit. NABP's annual meeting is May 19th through 21st in Phoenix, Arizona. I think it has been the tradition of the board that the president goes at the expense of the board if he or she would like to go. So I'm assuming that if Julie can go, she's your official delegate, but I need to know that. And then I also need to know if there's someone else that's interested in going to that meeting. We can apply for a travel grant through NABP Foundation, but I must put the person's name on it that's going, that would like to go, and they will cover up to $1,500 of your expenses and incidentals, but I need to do that ASAP. So if there's someone else that would like to go, or Julie may not be able to go, we need to make that determination as well. So that's what I have going on. 3 NABP opportunities, opioid collaborative summit, NABP official delegate, and then a second member of NABP to go to NABP annual meeting.
And then Ian, besides these, we also have opportunities to sit on task force periodically, and so we always encourage each other as those opportunities come forward to volunteer. It's a great way for us to learn a lot at the meetings, bring back information. So, as those things come up, do kind of look to see what will work for you. All right. Any other miscellaneous business? John, the floor is yours, my friend.
All right. Board members looking at page 1. There we go. Board members, we're looking at H1, and Ms. Holloway mentioned this earlier, but the PFDs for Mr. Cooper and Mr. Yarlagata, those were default orders, meaning they did not show up at the State Office of Administrative Hearings, and those were handled under H3. So the two that we're going to look at this afternoon are for Mr. Bennett and Mr. George. And we're going to start with Mr. Bennett. On June 30th, 2021, a proposal for decision was issued by an administrative law judge, or ALJ, of the State Office of Administrative Hearings in the matter of contested case of Texas State Board of Pharmacy versus Demon Leon Bennett. For procedural history, Mr. Bennett holds a pharmacy technician registration, number 105758. The ALJ found by preponderance of evidence that Mr. Bennett had received a Class B misdemeanor for prostitution non-public pay fee, a crime of moral turpitude, and received 6 months deferred adjudication and a $200 fine. At the hearing, board staff presented evidence of the criminal matter. The ALJ agreed with board staff's recommendation of imposing a reprimand. I will point out that in the order before you, we did fix a technical correction with regards to the incorrect registration number being listed in the ALJ's proposal for decision. So consistent with the ALJ's recommendation, though, board staff is asking the board to impose a reprimand on Mr. Bennett's registration, and board staff has prepared a board order reflecting that recommendation, and staff urges the board to adopt that order.
All right. Do you have any questions for John? Seeing none, do I have a motion?
A motion to accept the staff's recommendation to reprimand.
We have a motion from Donna to accept the staff's recommendation to reprimand. Do we have a second?
Second.
Got a second from Rick Fernandez. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
We're going to look at the PFD for Mr. George. On October 5th, 2021, a proposal for decision was issued by an administrative law judge from the State Office of Administrative Hearings in the matter of contested case of Texas State Board of Pharmacy versus Oladipo Ken George. For procedural history, Mr. George holds pharmacist license number 42818. The ALJ found by the preponderance of the evidence that Mr. George, while the pharmacist in charge of RX Pharmacy, had allowed the unlicensed practice of pharmacy. Specifically, the temporary pharmacist license of a pharmacist there had expired, and the individual at issue continued performing pharmacist duties, including filling and dispensing prescriptions, even though she was no longer licensed. At the hearing, board staff presented witness testimony and documentary evidence of this violation. And the ALJ agreed with board staff's recommendation of imposing a 1-year probation along with a $1,200 probation fee. So consistent with the ALJ's recommendation, board staff is asking the board to impose that 1-year probation along with a $1,200 order reflecting that recommendation, and staff urges the board to adopt that order.
Are there any questions for John? Do we have a motion from the board? Donnie has made the motion that we accept the staff's recommendation for the board order. Second, Jenny. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? John, the recommendation carries.
All right. Thank you, board members.
Thank you so much, John. All right, seeing that bit of business done, if you follow the agenda, it does say we'll go into executive session. That is what we did earlier. So if there is no other business from the board, I will take a motion to adjourn. Donnie Lewis has made the motion